Y'all too ready to get this video started? No pressure. The first thing people will notice about Minari is the 1970s setting along with the backdrop of the vast green open fields of a rural place in the middle of nowhere. In one long scene, the camera moves from inside the car as it drives on an open road surrounded by trees and a peaceful environment. Once the car comes to a halt at a trailer house, the camera is positioned for a wide-angle shot from an outside view. While writing the script, director Lee Isaac-chung set out to produce an honest film that portrays Korean immigrants in a way that is not traditionally seen in film, because Hollywood and television culture does not actively make opportunities for Asian representation. Many are left with stereotypical and typecast portrayals of their cultures. For instance, co-author Nancy Wang Yuan reports to USA Today, despite the more visibility of Asians in popular consciousness in popular culture, they are still not just quantitatively underrepresented, but they are qualitatively tokenized, isolated, and stereotyped, unfortunately, and they're still not as complex as they could be. Without much representation in the media, minority groups are left with the insurmountable task of breaking the mold that has boxed in many cultures into typecast roles and limited the depth of their characters to a few recycled stereotypes that have plagued underrepresented communities for decades. Chung was inspired by his 5-year-old daughter, who reminded him of semblances to his childhood growing up on a farm, to author a story of intergenerational cultures and migration. Minari stands much more than just a nutritious and resilient plant, for in the film it is also a symbol of the instilling of Korean values into the children and Korean culture as a whole. Furthermore, the film surrounds a controversy in Hollywood over winning the Best Foreign Film Award when considering it was set in the United States and produced by American companies. The debate set precedents because other films like *Inglourious Basterds*, directed by Quentin Tarantino, whose dialogue was more than 50% foreign, won the Best Picture, while Minari did not get a chance to be entered into the Best Picture category. Lastly, the significance of the characters' culture and the depth at which they are written easily passes the racial Bechdel test, providing much needed representation of the Korean immigrant experience. According to the article History of Korean Immigration, from 1903 to the present, the high unemployment rate, political insecurity, and military dictatorship caused massive numbers of Koreans to immigrate to the United States in the 1960s through the early 1980s. Being one of these families, Monica and Jacob set out to build the best life they could in a new country and give their children the best opportunities they could in order to succeed later in their lives. Minari, much more like many immigrants' experiences, stands for a metaphor where the first generation may not make it in terms of the American dream, but future generations will have a much higher likelihood to achieve upward mobility in society, because Minari will not flourish into the second time it grows. Then it will bloom easily and will yield a much higher quality crop compared to the first time. Intergenerational differences are clearly highlighted in the film when David yells, "She smells like Korea," a clearly disrespectful way to talk to his elder. David has no real reason to dislike Sunja other than she is disrupting his existing way of life and can't accept her as a new member of the family. The US-born children have been taught westernized ideals, whereas Sunja ideas are born out of Korea, which creates an environment where David must adjust to his new home and cultural values that he is not accustomed to. Throughout the film, she continues with this ideology, slowly cracking away at David's defenses and finally receiving his empathy and achieving unity with him. Case in point is when Sunja and David are out by the river and David gets hurt, so she emphasizes that David is a really strong boy. Then David spots a snake crawling along a tree branch that crosses the river above. He's ready to scare away the snake, but Sunja intervenes, telling him, "It's better to see the snake than have it hide. Things that hide are more dangerous and scarier." In short, they understood the language of love. Through its stellar outdoor frames captured by the multiple angles of the camera, the audience feels the serene landscape of rural Arkansas. We walk away with a great sense of appreciation for the thoughtful directorship of Isaac Lee Chung of portraying intergenerational dynamics and immigration that posits the gaze on the Korean immigrant family as tender, diligent, and resilient as they pursue the American dream. Although faced with tragedy, whether it be physical or material, the Yees stood together to build their lives anew. Most importantly, intergenerations learned to coexist and adapt to the new changes. Minari, unlike everything that faded or got burnt away, was able to last and served as a symbol that ties to the homeland which strengthened immigrant family experiences against adversity.
Jacobo and Monica are a young married Korean couple with two children named Annie and David in the mid-1970s. Both parents migrated as chicken sex workers into Texas rural landscape, finding other Koreans at their job that have chosen similar path. Jacobo and Monica experience marital problems because Monica does not find her individually in the rural landscape because she is more familiar with the city. She has lost trust in Jacobo to care for the family after he chose the farm over David's house. Jacobo is following his dream to use his new his newly acquired land to grow Korean agriculture products in an effort to establish a steady income and a better life than what the family had in California. However, Monica voiced his concern that their funds are being wasted in a gamble and not enough is going to the kids, particularly to David, who has a hard memory. The arrival of Sonja not only makes Monica even happy but enforces the narrative of speaking from the heart and being American in one's own language, not just English through their respiration and growth through the family film. The viewer is left hoping that family will be able to stick together and prevent through and inconsistent time. The film explores the character relationship and David deep into how the culture and the generation difference cause a rift within the family that they must overcome to success through Jacobo business endeavors. In this new life of theirs, whether there is be financial or interpersonal burns stick together is their only option to do in the future. The U.S. born kids have American idea and find accessible of Songjong repelling because she embodies mannerisms of Korean culture that the kids are not accustomed to. David is a 5 years old boy and Annie is a 9 years old girl that have grown up learning American value and the culture shock of having to follow more Korean customers when Songjong moved in with them was a different transition from the kid to grow through. It's clear of fact David's behavior as he refused to accept the culture that Songjong began to instill in them. Songjang does not bake cookies, not pie, everything a grandma should be able to do to David's eyes. Songjang instead is inter, interested in wrestling, kicking, boxing, and a well-man on the wall, everything a grandma should not do to David's eyes. Songjang nails her performance with tenderness and comedic flair, inevitably finding her way into David's heart within every farm the come flow.
Yeah, man, I've never been more ready. In Minari, the Yi family moves from Koreatown, California to Arkansas to start their agricultural business selling homegrown Korean vegetables in hopes of finding financial success. The family must endure many obstacles that they are faced with, causing the straining of the family's relationships with each other. Ultimately, what makes them grow stronger is the unity that they find through an unexpected tragedy. David is finally able to empathize with Sunja after seeing how causing the fire affected her mental state, showcasing his personal growth and an improved relationship with Sunja. Although the viewer is left unsure what will happen with Jacob and Monica's relationship, they are still unified in doing what is best for the children, as shown when Monica rushes to help Jacob save as many crops as they can immediately after their fight. There's much to analyze within Minari, so we will be using a cultural approach in order to critique the film's plot, theme, and tone. Plot is an essential part in any film, and Lee masterfully incorporates symbolism into details of the films that propels it to greater heights. The title symbol, Minari, is extremely important in analyzing the cultural growth of the children. Sunja planting the Minari is in an ideal location represents her planting the seeds of Korean culture within the children. Throughout the film, she makes sure to nurture the children's knowledge and understanding of their Korean roots. When she first immigrates and plants the seeds, the children, especially David, are unable to accept the culture that she brings with her from Korea. Sunja is portrayed as energetic and playful, which would be traits that most children would enjoy. However, because of their cultural differences, David is often repulsed by her actions. This is exemplified in the scene where Sunja splits the Korean chestnut in her mouth to give to David, yet he is disgusted by the fact that she's trying to give him food that has already been in her mouth. David is not accustomed to being given food in that manner, which only worsens David's view of Sunja. Yet she does not give up and consistently instills Korean values into him, which is clearly shown as the kid's personal growth is in line with the growth of Minari whenever it is shown in the movie. After the fire, where David fully accepts Sunja as his grandmother and provides her comfort, the next scene is Jacob and David going to harvest the fully grown and blooming Minari, which symbolizes Sunja's success in nurturing the children. They have learned to respect their differences in culture and the generational differences that typically come with the child's relationship with their grandparents. David tells Sunja, "You're not a real grandma," because she does not bake cookies, she snores while she's sleeping, and makes him drink a home remedy from Korea. All David knows is the stories of American grandparents he's heard from other children, making it harder for him to accept his grandma's actions as that of a regular grandma. This struggle is felt through the entire film, with David's consistent objection to Sunja's way of life, which even goes as far as playing a disgusting prank on her, where he gives her his urine to drink. These acts of defiance are ways that David can express his displeasure with the new situation they are in. It could be difficult for the children to undergo massive changes in their lives early on, as it does not provide a stable and comfortable household for the children to grow. The kids must already have to adjust to a new life in Arkansas. Adding a new relative with a completely different culture than that what they have been living with their entire lives can prove to be extremely difficult for the kids to fully adjust to. David is unable to accept her because of their cultural differences, which causes difficulties when raising and caring for him. Jacob is driven to provide for the family because of how Korean culture stresses that the men of the family should be useful and hardworking. He parallels that sentiment through how he is consistently working on the farm and finishing his chicken sorting job quickly to get back to improving the farm as much as he can with the little resources he has available to him. Jacob works to instill these values into David, as shown when he takes David around the farm looking for the perfect spot to build a well. At first, Jacob refuses help from someone who douses to find a water source, as he disregards it and sets off to find his own source, proving his masculinity and usefulness. He is trying to set an example for David to be a strong, independent man when he is older. However, when the well dries up, he must eat his words and ask for help. The film is showing how asking for help is not a sign of weakness. One does not have to do everything on their own in order to be considered a man. Monica and Jacob migrated from Korea to the U.S. for economic growth, as many other families during the time period did. According to the article, History of Korean Immigration, from 1903 to present, the high unemployment rate, political insecurity, and military dictatorship caused massive numbers of Koreans to immigrate to the United States in the 1960s through the early 1980s. Being one of these families, Monica and Jacob set out to build the best life that they could in a new country and give their children the best opportunities that they could in order to succeed later on in their lives. Minari, much like many immigrants experience, stands for a metaphor where the first generation may not make it, in a sense, in terms of the American dream, but future generations will have a much higher likelihood to achieve upward mobility in society, because Minari will not flourish until the second time it regrows. Then it will bloom easily and will yield a much higher quality crop compared to the first time. Intergenerational differences are clearly highlighted in the film when David yells, "She smells like Korea," a clearly disrespectful way to talk to his elder. David has no real reason to dislike Sunja other than she is disrupting his existing way of life and can't accept her as a new member of the family. The US-born children have been taught westernized ideals, whereas Sunja's ideals are born out of Korea, which creates an environment where David must adjust to his new home and cultural values that he's not accustomed to. There are tensions that arise between the American kids and their grandma due to their differences. However, Sunja handles these situations well, being understanding and forgiving of the children's actions and words directed at her. Throughout the film, she continues with this ideology, slowly cracking away at David's defenses and finally receiving his empathy and achieving unity with him in the final scenes.